Hey, what's up everyone? How's everybody doing? Everyone doing pretty good? As good as I am? Good. Today we're learning Daf 75 of Masechta Shabbos, Daf Ayin Hey. Overview before we begin. Well, as you may have been able to intuit, I think that's a word, we're going to continue talking about different melakhos. So those melakhos include tearing in order to sew 2 stitches, trapping, okay? We'll talk a little bit about the chilazon snail from which we extract blood for the tcheles dye. We're going to talk about slaughtering, talk about salting and tanning, smoothing, cutting to size, writing 2 letters, knocking with a hammer, things like that. And we're going to get to a new mission at the end. That's a little bit of a kind of structural overview. Let's get started. All the way at the bottom of Ayin Daled Amud Beis. So it says, Akorea Amanas Litfor, somebody who tears in order to stitch. Kriyab Mishkan Miava. So was there any tearing that would go on in the Mishkan? Excuse me. So Rabbi and Rabbi Zera say, Darna. So if you had one of the covers for the Mishkan that a worm fell in there, and the worm was gonna ate like little holes in it. So korin ba v'tofanosa. So what they would do is they would kind of take this little tiny hole and they would actually make it bigger. They would make a little bigger hole and then they would sew it together. Maybe that's like a sewing technique. I don't know. Anybody know? Like if there's like a little hole in a garment, rather than just like stitching up, do you kind of make it a little bigger so that it's easier to stitch? Amar B'Zutra Bar Tuvia Amarav, says the holy Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia in the name of Rav, Hamoteach Chut Shel Tfir B'Shabbos Chayev Chatas. So let's say you have 2 garments that, or 2 pieces of fabric that are sewn together. Now, and there are threads hanging, there's extra thread. And if the 2 fabrics get loose from each other, you can just kind of pull the threads in order to bring them back to each other. So by doing that, by pulling these threads on Shabbos, and thereby kind of strengthening the stitching, that will be an issue of tefira, of sewing. Now, Rav isn't done. He continues. Somebody who learns something from a magush. A magush is some guy, I think the art school said some kind of Persian priest or something. Some guy who would, or maybe that was a Safaria, who can remember? But some kind of a Persian priest who would, he wasn't a big fan of the Eibishter, let's say, and he would try to convince you to come over to his team and serve his gods, and he would kind of talk smack against the Eibishter. So if you kind of hang out with this fellow too much, so you're going to be chayiv misa. Somebody who knows to calculate sort of astronomy, astrology, I guess. Somebody who knows how to calculate different mazalot and tkufot, different astronomical kind of things, I guess. Ve'enu choshev, and he doesn't sort of utilize this talent or this skill of his. Also, the Sapri menu, you're not allowed to talk with him. Okay, let's kind of unpack these things. So the first thing, obviously, that we learned was that if you kind of pull these 2 threads, thereby strengthening stitches, so that'll be tefira. But sort of these more sort of interesting statements. So magushta. So Rav had said that if you talk to this magushta fellow, so you're chayiv misa. So Rav Shmuel Chad Amar Charshe v'Chad Amar Gadufe. So there's a machlokas Rav and Shmuel about what exactly this magushta fellow is. So one of them says it is a sorcerer. The other one says it is a blasphemer. Testaim de Rav Amar Gadufe. Now it would be logical to conclude that Rav is of the opinion who says that this magushta is a blasphemer. Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia Amarav, because of course we just learned from Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia, who quoted Rav as saying, halomei davar echad min hamagush chayev misa. That somebody who learns even one thing from a magush, from this magush fellow, he's chayev misa. Okay, meaning don't even talk to him. Even if he wants to teach you a shtickle Torah, don't listen to him. Have nothing to do with him. And that would only make sense if you understand a magush as being a blasphemer. Because if you just say that he's simply a sorcerer, somebody who kind of is knowledgeable in the ways of Avodah Zarah. So Aksiv, doesn't the pasuk say lo silmod la'asos? Right? The pasuk in Devarim, in Sefer Devarim says, you're going to a new land, don't learn from their ways in order to do like them. So aval atalamid lahavnu lahoros. But you can learn from them in order to understand what is Avodah Zarah, to understand, what you shouldn't be doing, to understand the halachos. And therefore, now Rav, who says that if you go to this magosh, so then you're chayiv misa, so it must be that a magosh is not a simple sort of sorcerer, because you would be allowed to learn from him in order to understand what sorcery is and what not to do. However, but by understanding magosh as this blasphemer, so then I understand why you shouldn't be going to him, because he's going to be blaspheming against God, and there's really no value there for you. Tistayim zeh. So we want to say that Rab is the one who says that the magosh is this blasphemer. Amr Reb Shimon ben Pazi, Amr Reb Yehoshua ben Levi, Mishum bar Kapara, Kol hayodeh lechashev b'tkufos umazalos ve'eno choshev. Anybody who knows how to sort of calculate times of the year, periods of the year, and different constellations, I guess. Olav Akasov Omer, about him, right, and he doesn't do it. So about him, the pasuk says, "Vespoal Hashem lo yabitu," that the actions of God they will not look towards, u'maisiyad of loro, and they don't see the activities of his hands. Zeo, meaning kilu, he has the ability to look at the works of God and to see the acts of his hand, and he's neglecting that skill. Amar B'Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar B'Yonasan, minayin shemitzvah la'adam l'chashiv tkufos umazalos. How do we know that it is a mitzvah for a person to calculate these tkufos and mazalos? Shneimar ushmartem v'asisem. So the pasuk also in Sefer Devarim says that you shall guard and you shall do the Torah, ki chochmaschem uvinaschem le'enei ha'amim, because it is your wisdom and your understanding among the nations. Ezo chachma uvina shi le'enei ha'amim. What is the wisdom and the understanding that is to the eyes of the nations? This is being able to predict and to calculate these different astronomical, I guess, or astrological things. And Rashi explains, because Kilu, if you could say, I know that X, Y, and Z is going to happen because I could see it in the stars, and sure enough it happens, you kind of get some street credit. And I guess if we're trying to compete with the other nations, we want to get as much street credit as we can. So if you know how to calculate tkufos and mazalos, you're a big asset to Team Jew. Hatzad tzvi v'chulei. Okay, so somebody who traps a deer. Oh, deer. Ha 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 ha. Okay, v'chulei. Tana Rabban, hatzad chilazon. So somebody who traps a chilazon snail. So the chilazon was some kind of a snail that they would use. I bet that in the Steinsaltz, in the Koran Gemaras, I bet they have a photo of a chilazon snail. Come on. Someone's going to share that with us, right? Adam Freeman, I'm looking right at you. Anyways, hatzad chilazon. Somebody who traps a chilazon snail, v'apoto, and somebody who sort of cracks the shell of the snail in order to extract its blood, so that you can use the blood to make tcheles dye. Okay, so you're basically doing two things. One, you're trapping the snail. Two, you are extracting its blood. Okay, enu chayav ela'achas. Nonetheless, the Tanna Kama says you're only chayav for trapping. That's it. Rabbi Yehuda Omer chayav shtaim, whereas Rabbi Yehuda says you're going to be chayav for two melakhos. Shahaya Rabbi Yehuda Omer pitzia bichlal disha. Because Rabbi Yehuda would say that extracting blood is basically part of dash. Dash is when you extract the wheat from its shell, I guess, from its kernel or something. So, and here you are extracting blood from the snail. So Rabbi Yehuda says you'd be chayiv twice, one for trapping and one for extracting. Mifarek, which is a tolada of dash. Amrulo, they said to Rabbi Yehuda, Ein p'tzia b'chladisha. The Chacham said, sorry, Rabbi Yehuda, we disagree with you. We are of the opinion that extracting blood from a chilazon would not be considered dash. Amarav, my time in the Rabbanan. Rava says, how come the rabbis would not consider extracting the blood of the chilazon to be dash? Because the Rabbanan hold that dash is only relevant for things that grow from the ground. Snails don't grow from the ground, and therefore extracting their blood would not be considered dash. Okay, fine. So that's machlokas. The Chachamim say that if you trap a chilazon and extract its blood, you will be chayiv for trapping. Rabbi Yehuda adds to that you will also be chayiv for dash, for extracting the blood. Weiter. V'lechayiv nami mishum netilas neshama. No. What about the fact that you're going to kill the thing? No. How are you going to extract the blood of the snail without killing the snail? So, even according to the Chacham, so you're chayiv for trapping, but when you're extracting the blood, shouldn't you also be chayiv for killing the snail? So, Rabbi Yochanan shepitza umeis. So Rabbi Yochanan resolves this question by saying that, well, when they extracted the blood, the snail was already dead. So, therefore you weren't killing it. Okay? The only possible issue would be dash, and they say that dash is only by gedulei karka. Rava disagrees with Rabbi Yochanan, and he says, afilu tema sheptzau chai. Rava says, you can even argue that they were extracting the blood from the chilazon snail when it was alive. Okay, so if that is the case, so what about the fact that you're killing it? So he answers, misasek hu eitzal netilas neshama. So Rava says, but it's misasek, right? Remember misasek? If you're picking up a knife in like a tomato patch, okay, and the knife, inadvertently cuts a tomato from its vine. So he says you're potter because you were misasek. You right? What is it called? Misasek b'davar acher, right? You were busy just picking up the knife, and then all of a sudden, somehow, some random other thing happened, which was that the tomato got cut off of the vine, and everyone agrees in that case that you'd be potter. Okay. Now, so Rava wants to say the same thing here. I'm misasek. I'm busy just releasing the blood from the snail. Oh, whoa! This thing died. That was completely unintentional, and therefore that would be okay. But the Gemara asks, but don't Abaye and Rava both agree that Reb Shimon would admit by Psik reisha v'lo yamos? Who could tell me what Psik reisha v'lo yamos is? Literally what it means is to remove the head and it won't die, right? Meaning, if you have a little chicken on Shabbis, and you say, you know what? I would really like to play with a chicken head. So you take your chicken and you remove the head from the chicken, and now you have a chicken head to play with. But there's just one problem. You just killed the chicken, and that's a problem. But you're going to argue, yeah, but I didn't, that wasn't my intention. I just want the chicken's head, right? To which our response will be, Psik reisha v'lo yamos? What, do you really think that you can remove the chicken's head and the chicken won't die? Since the chicken necessarily will die when you remove the head, you can't just remove the head. And therefore, Psik reisha is applied to basically, I think, any situation where a melacha will necessarily happen. Okay? So now, in this case, what's happening? So Rav is trying to argue it's misasek. I'm just extracting the blood from the snail. Oops, it died. That was completely unintentional, therefore it's okay. But we say, but of course the snail is going to die. I'm taking its blood away from it. So why would that be acceptable? Shouldn't that be a psik reisha v'lo yamos? So the Gemara answers, shiny hacha, that the snail is actually, so the way I understand it is the point is that the snail is actually not a psik reisha v'lo yamos. Dechama de izbe neshama tve nichale kechi delitzil tzive. That in this case, right, dechama de izbe neshama tve nichale. That the longer that this snail stays alive, it's in his best interest. It's better for him. Kechi delitzil tzive, so that its color will be clearer. That'll be a better. You'll be able to create a better tcheles dye. So apparently, this blood was of higher quality as long as the snail was alive. And I guess once the snail dies, you don't really want the blood anymore. It's not going to be high quality blood anymore. And therefore, you have no interest in the snail dying, right? Really, what your goal is to push the snail to its limit until it's going to die. Because as long as it's alive, the blood is good. Once it's alive, the blood isn't good anymore, and you don't really want the blood anymore. So therefore, you have no interest in killing the snail. What you would like to do is you would like to basically extract as much blood as you can when it's alive, and when it's about to die, you leave it alone, and keep it alive. And therefore, in that case, first of all, it's not necessarily true that you are going to kill the snail. And even if you do, then it was unintended. And since it was unintended, it's it's not necessarily a psik reisha. Whereas when it comes to taking the chicken's head, taking the chicken's head will 100% kill this chicken. There's no way to remove the head without killing the chicken, and you have no interest in making sure that the chicken stays alive. So that's for sure not going to be allowed. But in this case, you can extract the blood, and maybe if you're a professional enough, you'll know exactly when to stop, and you won't necessarily kill the snail. Okay. The Mishnah is talking about slaughtering an animal. Okay. So shoched mishum mai chayev. So when you slaughter an animal, what are you chayev for? Okay. What does that mean? So Rashi actually points out, because in building the Mishkan, there wasn't necessarily slaughtering of an animal. Like, you didn't necessarily have to slit the throat of an animal. What did you need? You needed the hides of, let's say, the oros elim adamim, right? The hides from these red rams. So Rashi points out you could theoretically, strangle it to death, meaning you don't have to necessarily shecht it. What you needed was the hides. So sure, you had to kill an animal, but you didn't necessarily have to shecht it. So we're saying that when you slaughter something on Shabbos, what are you chayev for? So let's see. So shochet mishum mai chayev, right? So when you specifically slaughter an animal, as opposed to like killing it in some other way, what are you chayev for? So Rav amar mishum tzoveh, Shmuel amar mishum netilas neshama. So Rav says that actually when you slaughter it, you are going to be liable for the melacha of coloring, of tzoveh. Whereas Shmuel says you are liable for the melacha of killing an animal. Let's go on for a minute. Mishum tzoveh in, mishum netilas neshama lo. Rav says that you would only be chayev for coloring, you wouldn't be chayev for killing an animal. Ema af mishum tzoveh. So Rav would say even for tzoveh. So now, when they were building the Mishkan, okay, so that, they would have to kill this, they would have to kill these red rams in order to get their hides for the covering of the Mishkan. But the thing is, all you had to do was really kill it. You didn't have to slaughter it, let's say. So Rav says that by slaughtering on Shabbos, not only are you going to be chayev for the malacha that they did when building the Mishkan of killing an animal, but you will additionally be chayev for coloring, because when you slaughter the animal, the meat around the neck where you slaughtered it is going to be red, because that's the color of blood. And whereas Shmuel says, no, you'd only be chayev for the malacha that happened in the Mishkan, which was killing an animal. Okay? So now, Amar Rav, now Rav says, Milsa de Amri, this is funny. So this thing that I just said, Ema ba milsa d'loleisu dari basrai v'leichachu alai. Let me explain what I meant so that the later generations don't come and laugh at me. And he says, Tzovea b'mai nichale, how come he'd be chayev for tzovea? How come, when he shechts this animal, he's interested in coloring this blood, the area by the neck? So, nicha delitavus beis ashchita dama keiche delechazua inshe vilesu lizabnu mine. So he says, you know why somebody who's shechting an animal is interested in the area by the neck being colored by the blood? Because, say you're a butcher and you work in some kind of market and people are coming and they want to know if the meat is fresh. Well, guess what? If all the blood around the neck where it was shechted is like all dried and crusty, so it probably is not super fresh. But if the meat around the area where it was shechted is all bloody and kind of freshly sliced looking, so then whatever, it looks like a better product, fresher product. So therefore it's in his interest that there should be some coloring on the meat. So that's why Rav says you'll be chayiv additionally for coloring in addition to killing the animal, whereas Shmuel says you'll be chayiv only for killing the animal. The Mishnah says that the following two things are melakhos on Shabbos, salting and tanning. Okay? Hainu molech v'hainu ma'abed. So the Gemara says, 1 second. Tanning and salting are the same thing, meaning part of the process of tanning is salting it, is salting the hide. So, Rabbi Yochanan v'Reish Lakish Tamar Tarvayu, Apekad Minayu v'Ayil Sirtut. Interesting. So Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish both say, you know what? You're right. You can remove one of these two items from the Mishnah and replace it with sirtut, which is after they would tan the hides and right before they were to cut it into strips, so they would make marks on the hide so that they could basically then just follow the lines that they made when they will, slice it into strips. Okay? So that's an Av Melacha making these lines, scratching these lines. Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna, Hayman demalach bisra, chayv mishum ma'abed. Somebody who salts his meat. I guess you have meat, you're eating lunch or whatever, you're eating meat, and you salt it, you're going to be chayiv for tanning. Rava Amar, and ibud ba'ochlin. Rava says, there's no tanning when it comes to food. You can't tan your food. You tan hides. Amar Rav Ashi v'afilu Rabba bar Rav Huna lo Amar el d'kabayle le'orcha aval levesu lo mashve inish mechle eitz. Now Rav Ashi explains Rabba bar Rav Huna who says that if you salt your meat, then you are going to be chayiv for tanning. So Rav Ashi says, when he says this, it's only if you're, I don't know, in my mind it's something like, some kind of like biltong kind of thing, some kind of dried meat, preserved meat kind of thing. So if you're salting your meat in order to preserve it, le'orcha, so you could travel and eat it on the way, right, for some kind of later preservation, so then that would be an issue of tanning according to Rabbi Bar Rav Huna. However, if you simply just want to salt your meat, so you can eat it and it'll taste better. So Rav Ashi says, Lo mashve inish meichle eitz. Nobody's interested in making his food into wood. So therefore, we can assume that he's just salting it so he can eat it and that would be acceptable. He's not looking to tan it. Okay, somebody who smooths the skin of the, of this hide, of this animal that he shechted. Somebody cuts it into specific sizes. So Amar Rabbi Acha bar Chanina hashaf ben ha'amudim b'Shabbos chayiv mishum memachik. Says Rabbi Acha bar Chanina. Okay, so Rashi explains this, and I got this according to the Art Scroll, that somebody who's, okay, so if you have some kind of like pavilion, and in the pavilion there are like these pillars, okay? There are like pillars holding up the roof, and then in between these pillars, you kind of just smooth out the ground over there. So you can be chayiv from a machik. And apparently people ask questions on this because like we talked about smoothing out the ground the other day. We said it would be chayiv for boneh. So there's actually another explanation, the Sefaria mentioned it from Rav Haigon, which is that there were actually like two pillars that they would make specifically for smoothing hides. And what you would do is you would like put it in between these pillars and kind of run the meat between them and it would smooth out the meat. So if you do that, you're chayiv from a machik, which is smoothing. Okay? Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba. It says Rabbi Chia bar Abba. So it says here of Ashi, but there's the Gilyon, I believe, changed it to Rav Asi, which makes more sense because for a few reasons. First of all, Rav Chia bar Abba was in Eretz Yisrael. Rav Ashi was in Bavel. But even so, Rav Chia bar Abba was a student of Rabbi Yochanan, which means that he was an earlier Amor, whereas Rav Ashi was like Ravina and Rav Ashi, right? Ravina and Rav Ashi, at least traditionally, were the authors of the the editors of the Gemara. So, meaning Rav Ashi came much later. So, for that reason also it makes sense that it would be Rav Asi, right? So, Rav Chia bar Abba was kind of like in the generation of Rabbi Yochanan, a student of Rabbi Yochanan, as was Rav Asi. So, it kind of makes sense to say that it's Rav Asi. So, Amar Rav Chia bar Abba, Gimel Dvarim Sachli Rav Asi Mishmei Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi Hamagara Roshe Klonsos b'Shabbos Chai Mishum Mechatech. Somebody who planes, somebody who kind of smooths out with a plane, some kind of like knife, the tops of like pillar, like beams almost, with on Shabbos, so it's going to be chayav for cutting to size. Okay, I'm a marech rutia b'Shabbos chayav mishum machik. Somebody who covers a cut with a bandage, he smooths it with like a bandage, kind of covers it with a bandage, I guess. So he's chayav for smoothing. Somebody who takes a stone and kind of like cuts it to shape. So then he's going to be chayav for makeh b'patish, which we learned the other day is basically any time, I think we saw that in Rashi, and we're going to see it again today as well, that any time you basically complete to complete like the melacha for something, that's going to be makeh b'patish, putting the final hammer blow on something. So in this case, you have a stone that you already quarried from the mountain, so all you need to do is basically shape it and cut it to size. So if you do that, you'll be chayav for makeh b'patish. Okay? Amr Reb Shimon ben Kisma, Amr Reb Shimon ben Lakish, Hatzartzura b'chli, somebody who puts like a shape, an image into a vessel, V'amenapeach b'chli zchuchis, or somebody who blows into a glass, very hot glass vessel to kind of like give it some kind of shape. Chayav mishum makeh b'patish will also be chayav for putting the final blow on the work that needs to be done there. Amr Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda, Haiman deshakel akufe miglime. Somebody, if he goes to like some kind of garment and, it's done, it's complete, but there are like a few threads that are just kind of hanging off, or maybe there's a few things that got stuck in the threads while it was during the weaving process, and you remove those things. So, chayav mishum makeh b'patish. You'll be chayav for makeh b'patish, because kilu, also over here, the garment is done, it's already been woven, it's ready to be worn, and now you're just looking it over and you see, here's an extra thread, there's an extra thing. So you're kind of removing these things and make it perfect to get ready to wear. Well, that you're going to be chayav for makeh b'patish because you're kind of perfecting the garment. But that is only, of course, if he's makbid on these things. If he wants to make sure that before he wears it, there's no extra threads hanging out or anything like that, so then his removal of these threads would be like the final step in creating this garment and making it ready to be worn. But if you don't really care, and you're just like taking it out, I don't know, for fun or whatever it is, so then it won't be makeh b'patish. Somebody who writes 2 letters on Shabbos. Taner Rabbanan, this is interesting. If you write 1 big letter, and in the same space where you wrote 1 big letter, you could have theoretically written 2 smaller letters. So you're pater. So you're not chayav a korban chatas for that, because in the Mishkan they would write 2 letters. What they would do is when they were dismantling the Mishkan, they would kind of write, so the Mishkan had all these beams, and these beams would be put one next to the other, and that's how they would make the walls for the Mishkan. So when they were dismantling it, they would write on each beam, and the beam next to it, make like an indication of which beam it is, so that they could put them away together, and then when they reconstruct the Mishkan, they just find these beams based on the writing that's on it, and they can construct it properly. So they would write 1 letter on each beam. So therefore, the minimum was 2 letters that they would write, meaning 1 on one beam, 1 on the beam next to it. So therefore, writing 2 letters on Shabbos is a melacha. But if you only write 1 letter, even if it's a big letter, still, you didn't do what they did in the Mishkan. However, when it comes to erasing, that's not the case, because the point is, as the Mishnah said, right? Somebody who erases so that he could then write 2 letters. So when it comes to, so it's not necessarily about erasing 2 letters, it's about erasing enough that you'd be able to write 2 letters. And therefore, if you erase 1 big letter and there's enough space to therefore write 2 letters in its place, you will be chayav for mochek. Okay. Amar Rabbi Menachem Rabbi Yossi v'zachomer b'mochek mi b'kosev, and this is how mochek, erasing, is actually more stringent than writing, because writing, you actually have to write 2 letters, whereas mochek, you can theoretically even erase just 1 letter, as long as there is room to write 2 letters, and you will be chayiv. Weiter. Habona v'asoser, somebody who builds, somebody who dismantles, v'amechabe v'amavir, somebody who extinguishes, and somebody who kindles, v'amake v'patish, and somebody who lands the final hammer blow on the item that he's building. Rabbi Rabzera Dami Tarvayu, Komidi di Izbeg my melacha, Chayv Mishumake v'patish. Anything that you do on Shabbos, that by doing so it is the completion of the work of a certain object. So, so we just had a case, for example, you have a brand new article of clothing and you're just kind of looking it over and removing any final hair, any final threads or whatever. So that would be makeh b'patish. So anytime you kind of do the final step, the absolute final step in creating something, that would be the melacha of makeh b'patish. Elu of his melakhos. So we say that these are the 39 melakhos. Elu lafukim Rabbi Eliezer d'mchayiv al tolada b'makom av. So we're saying these are the 39 to the exclusion of Rabbi Eliezer, who says they also chayiv for tolados. Because if you remember, our Mishnah said it's 39, and as we've seen a few times, how come it specifically says 39? So Rabbi Yochanan explained to teach us that if you violate all 39 in one helem, so you'll be chayav for each one. You'll be chayav 39 korban chatases. Now, we also assumed, right, we also said in the Gemara on Daf Ayim Gimel Amud Beis that you're only chayav, for the avos, and if you do avos and tolados, you'll only be chayav once. Rabbi Eliezer, however, disagrees with that, and he says that no, if you do avos and tolados, you're chayav for each thing that you did, right? So let's say you did threshing with wheat, and then you also milked a cow, so you'd be chayav for both dash and for mefarik, even though it's the same av. And therefore, so when we say that these are the 39, that basically means that 39 is the maximum number of korbanos that you could possibly bring, because, if you do avos and tolados, you're really only going to be chayiv for that. Whereas Eliezer says, no, you could be chayiv more than 39. If you do all 39 melakhos and tolados, you can be chayiv, the number of avos and tolados that you did. Weiter. Chaser achas, lafukim Rabbi Yehuda. So to exclude Rabbi Yehuda, the Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Mosif as hashovet ve'amedaktek. So we say that there are 39, but Rabbi Yehuda actually would have 41. He adds also shovet, which is after you mounted the warp threads onto the loom, you would take some kind of pointy instrument and you would go over the threads, and if there were 2 that were like overlapping each other or touching each other, you would use this pointy object to kind of separate them. And medaktek would be after you throw the weft through the loom, you would then kind of you would beat down the threads a little bit to make sure that they aren't too tight, that there's just the right amount of tension. Amrulo shovet haru b'chlal meisech medaktek haru b'chlal oreg. To which the Chacham explained, disagreed with Rabbi Yehuda, and they responded that shovet, using this pointy object to separate the warp threads, so that would be included in the melacha of mesach, of mounting the warp. Medaktek, whereas beating the threads, aru b'chlal oreg, would be considered part of the melacha of weaving. New Mishnah. V'od klal acher amu. They said another rule. What's this rule? Kol hakasher la'atzniya. Anything that you would normally put away, okay, something that you would normally care enough to put away, fine. Umatzniin kamahu, and it is large enough, there's enough quantity of this item that you would put it away, right? I don't know, what's an example? I don't know, maybe if we could just talk about like food or something like that. I don't know, let's say you have some salad, let's say, okay? So if you don't finish your salad, I guess, you would put it away for later. And then, I guess you could probably say that. And then but if you just have one leaf of spinach or something, so you're probably not going to put that away, right? So meaning it's something that you would normally put away for later, and also it's enough that you would put it away. So votzio b'Shabbos, and then you took that out to Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos, chayiv chatas, alav, so you can be chayiv chatas. However, v'chol she'eno kasher latzniya, but something that you don't normally care to put away, okay? Vein matzniin kamo, or even it's something that you care to put away, but it's not a quantity that you would necessarily care enough to put away. V'otzio b'Shabbos eino chayiv, and then you take that out into Rosh Hashanah, then you're not chayiv. Ela matznio, unless, of course, if you are a unique individual who would care to put this thing away for later, well then if you take it out on Shabbos, you would be chayav. So it's a little subjective there. When we say anything that you would normally put away, okay, what's an example of something that you wouldn't normally put away? What's it coming to exclude? Interesting. So Rav Papa says that it's to exclude dam nida, menstrual blood. You wouldn't necessarily put that away for later. Okay? Mar Ukva Amar lafuke atze ashera. Mar Ukva says that it's to exclude the wood of an ashera tree. Okay? An ashera tree, of course, being a tree that was used in the worship of Avodah Zarah. So you have no reason to put that away for later. Okay? Manda Amar dam nida kol sheken atze ashera. Somebody who says that it's coming to exclude dam nida, well, then certainly also this would exclude atze ashera, because the assumption being that dam nida is ma'us, it is kind of unpleasant, whereas ashera is not only is it we consider it to be unpleasant, but it's also asur ba'ana'ah. So if you say that it's to exclude dam nida, it's also certainly excluding ashera trees. Mandamar atze ashera avad dam nida matna leile shunra. But the Manda Amru says that that our Mishnah is coming to exclude Asherah trees. Well, dam nida, however, would be something that you might put it away for later. Why would you put it away for later? So you can feed it to your cat. Okay. Ve'idach, whereas the Manda Amru who says that dam nida is not something you would stash away for later. Interestingly, apparently if a human feeds their own blood to a cat, well, that human from whom the blood originated will all of a sudden start feeling not so good. And therefore, according to the Manda Amru who says that our Mishnah is excluding Asherah trees, but according to Manda Amar, who says that dam nida is excluded from something that you would stash away for later, is because even though theoretically you could give it to your cat, but then you wouldn't feel very good. So therefore, it's not something that you would stash away for later for your cat. Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, says Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, Hai delo kreb Shimon di kreb Shimon ha'amar lo amru kol ashirin alalu el matzni ein. So our Mishnah that says that, we said that if it's something that either normally you wouldn't stash away, or even it's something that you would stash away, but it's not large enough that it's not enough quantity that you would stash away, so then we said you would be pater. But if you normally were to take these things out, then you would be chayav. So now this is, which makes it subjective. So this is unlike Rabbi Shimon, who says, kol ashirin alalu, right? Lo amru kol ashirin alalu el matzni ayin. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. When we said it in the Mishnah, when we said in the reisha of the Mishnah, that if you have something that normally, right, most people would take it out, right? Meaning we said, right, something that you would normally save for later, and in general, it's a quantity that most people would consider enough to take out, right? So then you would be chayav for taking it out on Shabbos. Now, Rabbi Shimon disagrees with that and says, no, it's all relative. If I normally were to take it out on Shabbos, then I would be chayav for it. If I normally wouldn't take it out, I would be pater. So for example, a wealthy person might only care about larger quantities. If I would save it for later, then I would be chayav for taking it out on Shabbos. Wow, I'm really messing this up. Sorry, guys. But what it means is this. So our Mishnah says that no matter what, if it's something that in general people would put away for later, you'd be chayav for taking it out on Shabbos, right? Whereas Rabbi Shimon says it depends on the person, right? A wealthy person, for example, might only be makpid on larger quantities. Lesser quantities, he might not necessarily care enough to save it for later. Therefore, for him, he would be pater for taking those things out on Shabbos. Whereas a poor person, let's say, might be have a lower threshold for what he'd be wanting to save for later, and therefore, for him, even smaller amounts he'd be chayav for on Shabbos. Fine. That is daf ayin hey amud. So that is daf ayin hey. Let's do a shtickle review over here. So we started off the daf with tearing in order to sew, and we said where do we have that in the Mishnah? So we said if there was like a little tear, if a worm kind of ate a little hole in the threads of like the curtains of the Mishkan, so then you would kind of tear that a little bit and then sew it back together. Then we had three things that we said in the name of Rav. One is that tightening threads on Shabbos, you would be chayav. If you just kind of pull the ends of the threads to tighten the stitches, you would be chayiv for that. He also says that if you talk to a magusha, you will be chayiv misa. We said that there's actually machlokas Rav and Shmuel about what a magusha is. Shmuel, we assumed at the end of the day that it was Shmuel who says that a magusha is a sorcerer, and it would be okay to go to a sorcerer because you're just learning about what not to do, and that's okay. Whereas a magusha, Rav explains a magusha as being a blasphemer, so then don't go to him at all, and if you go, then you're going to be chayiv misa for his blasphemy stuff. And then we talk about if somebody knows, and Rav also said that if somebody knows how to calculate the tkufot and the mazalot, and he doesn't do it, then you can't talk to him, because he is an asset for our team, because if he kind of makes correct predictions, it looks good for us. Trapping. So we talked about the chilazon, this snail that they would use its blood to create the tcheles dye. So we said that according to the Chachamim, you would be chayiv only for trapping, whereas Rabbi Yehuda says that you would be chayiv also for dash, for extracting the blood, whereas the Chachamim say that dash is only by things that grow from the ground, so you'd only be chayiv for trapping. But then we ask, what about the fact that you're going to be killing this snail by extracting its blood? So Rav Yochanan says that, well, it's already dead, so therefore you're not killing it. Rava says, well, it's going to be misasek, right? You're just busy extracting the blood. If the thing dies, that completely was an unintended consequence. It didn't even enter your mind that would happen. Come on, that's silly. Isn't it a psik reisha v'lo yamas? Obviously it's going to die. So apparently not necessarily, because you have no interest in it dying, because once it's dead, the quality of the blood for the dye is inferior, and therefore you are going to be interested in keeping this thing alive and only pushing it to the limit of right before it's going to die. And therefore, even if it ends up dying, it's misasik. I was just trying to extract the blood, which is okay. I had no intention of killing it, and then it ended up dying. Slaughtering an animal on Shabbos. So Rav said that not only are you going to be chayiv for killing the animal, but also for coloring, because you're interested in coloring where you shechted it, so that people will know that it's fresh. Whereas Shmuel says you're only going to be chayiv for killing it, not for coloring. We talked about salting. So salting and tanning. So Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish said that really salting and tanning are the same thing. So you can remove one of them and add etching, making marks in the hide so that you know where to cut it. Rabbi Bar Rav Huna said that if you salt meat on Shabbos, it would be considered part of tanning. Rava responded that you don't tan food, so that would be okay. And Rav Ashi explained Rabbi Bar Rav Huna as saying that you're allowed to salt for short term to eat, but just don't salt for to make like a dried out preserved meat. We talked about smoothing and cutting to size. Don't do that. We talked about writing 2 letters, and we said that interestingly, if you write one big letter that is the size of 2 letters, it would be okay, because in the Mishkan they would specifically write 2 letters. However, erasing one big letter that's the size of a small letter, that's enough to write 2 letters, that would be you would be chayav a korban chatas for that. We talked about makeh b'patish, that whenever you complete a melacha on Shabbos, that would be the melacha of makeh b'patish. And then at the end we got into this Mishnah which says that something that you'd be makpid to put it away for later, so that, and in quantities that you'd be makpid to put it away for later, so then you would not be able to take that out to a different domain on Shabbos. Where if it's something that you would not be makpid to save for later, or if it's a quantity that you would not be makpid to save for later, if you go out with it to Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos, you would be pater. Okay? So that is Daf Ayin Hey Masechta Shabbos. I hope everybody enjoyed. Have a great day.